Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, another unit review for the Tyranid Learning Curve, and today we're looking at the Ravener. Now, the Ravener are actually quite similar to the Shrike, so I'm going to sort of half compare them to the Shrikes, which we just looked at in the previous video. So they are 30 points each, exactly the same as the Shrike, and they have very similar stats. Weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 3, strength 4, toughness 4, the 3 wounds. They are initiative 5, so they are higher initiative, but of course you can take the lash whips with the Shrike, but these come initiative 5 as standard. 3 attacks, the leadership 6, and the main reason for that is they're not a synapse creature, and they have that 5+ save, so very similar. They come with 2 sets of scything talons as normal, so you will get an extra attack for having 2 weapons, so again 5 attacks on the charge, and they are beasts. So with the beast rule, obviously that means you've got 12-inch movement, you ignore terrain, even on the charge. They have move through cover, so no dangerous terrain checks either. So that's pretty cool. They do have the deep strike ability as well, so as you can see, very similar stats to the Shrike. Now, they do feed if you're out of synapse range. They do have acute senses as well. Now, in terms of options, you've got a close combat option, which is rending claws, and that's how I always take them. As you can see, I've got the rending claws on the mini there. So I always go for the rending claws, which basically means your any wounds of 6 is really nasty. And it keeps the points down, just 5 points, so 35 points a mini, which is not too bad. Now you can take a gun with these guys if you want to. Now the gun has to go on the entire brood, but you can have Spine Fist for 3 points, Twin Linked ones, Devourers for 5 points, and Death Spitters for 10 points. Now there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't take a gun with these guys. And especially if you're deep striking them, probably quite a good idea. But of course, just like always, if you start to add a gun onto these guys, then that really does start to put the points up. And because they only have that 5+ save, and because they're only toughness 4, even with those 3 wounds, they're vulnerable to being killed quite quickly. So you may not necessarily want to invest too many points into these guys. Like I said, I tend to just go with the rending claws if I'm trying to keep it cheap. If I've got some points left over at the end, then I will try to give them the gun. Generally go for the Death Spitter if I can. Strength 5, 3 attacks, 18 inches, quite a nice gun. Now you do have the option to add the Red Terror to the brood, which is a special character which has been floating around the codexes for quite some time. But the Red Terror is effectively just a beefed up Ravener, almost like a sergeant. Now it's 85 points. I have to confess I've never used the Red Terror, mainly because I don't have the model, to be fair. But let's have a quick look at him. So he's weapon skill 6, slightly higher weapon skill. He's strength and toughness 5, so slightly better there. He's the same initiative, but he does have 1 extra attack, so 4 attacks. Plus he has 2 sets of scything talons, so it'd be 5 attacks. You don't have the option to do rending claws with him though. But he has leadership 8, and he has a 4+ save. So like I said, pretty much a sergeant. He does have the pincer tau, gives you an extra attack there, different initiative. He can deep strike, so he works with the unit quite well. He does have the swallow whole special rule. It's very circumstantial, and to be fair, you're probably unlikely to use that. 85 points, is it worth it? To be fair, it probably just isn't worth it. You'd be better off taking another couple of Ravener within the units, really, to be fair. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend him unless you've got the mini, unless you want a bit of fun. Tyranids are all about fun, so yeah. So how are we going to use them? Well, bearing in mind if you're going to deep strike them, they're going to be out of range of synapse potentially. So you've got to bear in mind that when you're deep striking, to try and keep some sort of synapse ability available to them for the next turn. you could, again, just like the Winged Warriors really, you could jump from pieces of terrain, you know, from one piece of terrain to the next to try and get them into close combat. Although you do have that gun option, and the gun is nice, ultimately these guys are a close combat unit, and if you can get them into close combat, they can perform incredibly well. Now you'll find you won't see these guys very often, and that's because ultimately for the points they're really not that competitive, but they are good fun to use. And they have a history, for me personally anyway, with those rending claws on there, to be quite a scary unit for your opponent. So if your opponent sees these, you know, he'll be watching, especially with that 12-inch movement and potentially now, you know, a good long assault range. So just like a lot of the other units that we've discussed in this codex, there's lots of units which aren't that actually great, but they are playable, and that's, I suppose, the thing really. It depends what you're looking for from the codex. Like I said at the very first video, it's an incredibly fun army to play. You can make it competitive. We've come across some very competitive units, and we will come across more competitive units as we go through. But there's also some sort of so-so units, you know. But the units themselves, as long as you're using them together, as long as you know the strengths and the weaknesses of the units, you know, they are definitely usable. And in some cases, having units like Ravener, where people don't see them very often, having that surprise element, that's also quite useful as well. Now, once we've reviewed each unit individually, we are going to continue the learning curve, looking at tactics and how to combine the units together, how to choose your army lists, how to deploy, you know, how to work the missions, etc. We're going to, you know, this series is not just individual units. It's going to continue on and above that, assuming GW don't release another codex by the time I'm finished. Okay, so that's it for the Ravener. A fun unit, reasonable unit, an underestimated unit, but you can see why. You know, 5+ save, you're going to go down to small arms fire quite easily, and yes, okay, 3 wounds, but toughness 4, you're very, very vulnerable to instant death. And just on a side note, because I haven't mentioned it, just like the Shrike Brood, these guys come in between 3 and 9 minis. And once again, I wouldn't necessarily go for smaller units. Okay, maybe if you're on smaller point games, but I think really you're going to need at least 5 of these guys. I tend to use them in units of 6. Okay, that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and as always, watch out for the next one. Thanks for watching.